Hi guys, Vivian Central here, and welcome back to another video. And today, we're going to be looking at something slightly different to a normal review, and we're going to be looking at the Doctor Who brand as a whole. And we're going to be looking at the things like they sell and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously Doctor Who's famous for its DVDs, classic run DVDs. You've got your new series DVDs, you've got your movie, you've even got a couple of spin-offs, and a BBC Radio collection. But no, we are not going to be looking at those kind of merchandise. We're going to be looking at probably arguably the bigger category, the Doctor Who books. So, in my opinion, but there is technically two different types of books. You got your target book novels, and you got your random books. So what's the difference? Target book novels, I've got a couple as I've shown off before. I've got ones like Twice Upon a Time, Day of the Doctor, City of Death, Genesis of the Daleks, Rose, and The Day of the Daleks. All of those are recreations of TV episodes that have had gone on. But however, you can also purchase stuff like I own Time Zero, The Monster Inside, Stealer of Dreams, Winner Takes All, Corpse Marker, Eye of Heaven, and two Smith books, Touched by an Angel and Paradox Lost. So these are they're not non-continuity books, but they're books that we haven't seen on TV. So they could have happened. There's no saying that they haven't happened, but we didn't actually view them on TV. Like this one, Eye of Heaven. This takes place between the Talons of Weng-Chiang and the Horror of Fang Rock between seasons 14 and 15. So according to this book, this happened in the continuity. However, we didn't actually get to view it. So I'm just gonna go through them and explain why books became so prominent in Doctor Who. So back in 1963, when Doctor Who started, they obviously, as I've explained before, they junked a load of episodes, which is why there's missing ones and they had to animate them and all that. But then all the way through the 70s and even the early beginning, like the 80s, there wasn't really a way you could review your favourite episode. So so nowadays, if you're a Doctor Who fan and you got BritBox or you've got loads of the DVDs and you go, I want to go watch Inferno, you can just grab your Inferno DVD, like me, just pop it into a DVD player or your Xbox or something, and watch the episode. But back then they couldn't do that, so the kind of not cop out, but the idea was around that time, a lot of writers, some whom actually wrote the original script for the story, and some whom were there as a script editor or a producer or something, would write the stories such as Day of the Daleks. Other notable ones are Genesis of the Daleks and City of Death. All of these are three classic stories which at the time would have been wrote. So back then, a child from 70s who was there and remembers the opening to Series 9, I thought that was an amazing story and wanted to rewatch it. They couldn't, so they'd buy the novelisation and read it to relive the Pertwee story. So during that time, it was kind of it was basically just a way for Doctor Who fans to relive their stories. But then in the 1980s, they started releasing all of the remaining episodes on VHS, and they had VHS releases. So the books became less needed. However, I believe they still kept coming out. And one of the leading men for this was Terrance Dicks. Now, Terrance Dicks is quite famous as he wrote one or two stories. I think he wrote quite a couple from the Patrick Troughton era. He wrote quite a couple. He was the script editor for Jon Pertwee, and he also wrote a couple of stories during the Tom Baker era, and also wrote the Five Doctors, because I believe Robert Holmes was originally going to write it, but then it's only happened. So then eventually Terrance Dicks came the one who wrote it. So he was like the forefront for writing these kind of stories. So he was the script editor. So he knew how to do them, and he was like the forefront for a reason. And then you get other people like James Goss, who wrote The City of Death. He wrote the novelization, and Douglas Adams and stuff. But yeah, as I said, eventually they went on to VHS. So now a Whovian would stop needing to read the books and can relive the episodes now on VHS. So at that point, they slowly started to die out. They don't really need the books anymore. But then in 1989, at the end, when Doctor Who eventually finished, there was nothing. There was no more episodes, because rather than Doctor Who being fully cancelled by BBC, they decided to say they were going to stop the show until they could bring it back. So it was in a state of limbo, and during that time, fans didn't really know what to do. So they just hadn't really got anything. But eventually, a group of people, I believe it's the same people who were releasing some of the books, the Target novelizations, they started releasing a range of books called The New Doctor Who Adventures, which unfortunately I don't own any of those stories, but they involve, so I believe, just Sylvester McCoy and Ace for most of them, and they're a whole range of books, and they're kind of stories where they're similar to like the new series, where they all kind of have a connection, so more just so they can keep the viewers to keep buying each of their books. And I think those were quite a hit, because then they started to make into a series. I also believe that this was the first time Russell T Davies and I believe Mark Gatiss both wrote one of those stories, and also Paul Canal, who wrote I have it here, wrote Twice Upon a Time, and he's written other things. He wrote Human Nature, which is the original book, Human Nature. But yeah, so that spawned off a new series of books, which at the time were canon. Maybe now some of them might not be. Maybe now it's not as canon. But at the time, those were like the continuation of the show. But then obviously the movie came out, and then after the movie, there was a couple more things. Like they started to span off and do more Doctor stuff with other Doctors, because they didn't need to do just Sylvester McCoy anymore. So that's the point where they released Time Zero and Eye of Heaven, which are two older books. This one obviously stars Fourth Doctor and Leela, and this stars Paul McGann's Doctor, the Eighth Doctor, in the story. So at this point now, we've got more books coming in from different eras and stuff like that. But yeah, and then it didn't really do, and then the books were like the forefront until around 2005, where the beginning of the new series started, and now the new series became like obviously massively popular. So the BBC and everyone who did that tried to capitalise off this, and they released a range of First Doctor books. I'm not sure, I think there might be 4 of them, and I believe I have 4 of them, but I can't find the last one. Yeah, a range of First Doctor books with Rose as the companion. And yeah, they are quite good. And it says here, and Captain Jackson, a couple of them. Captain Jackson, the Stealer of Dreams. So there was a couple where Captain Jack appeared and stuff like that. So it was just basically to, milk the success of it. Also, for fans who, while they were waiting basically for David Tennant to come back into the role, I mean. So that was all good. And then they obviously created a lot of 10th Doctor books. I do have some of them somewhere. But yeah, they obviously had a lot of 10th Doctor books. Now you got loads of 10th Doctor books, obviously, and so they capitalised on that. So these sort of Doctor Who BBC books went on right into Matt Smith's era, because although the logoing and all that's different for these two books, if you look at them quite clearly, they are exactly the same marketing brand, because you've got the logo in the middle, the things at the top, the villain or the landscape at the bottom, and then you got the BBC books in the corner. So they're very much produced by the same people. And then I don't 100% know when these came out, but then they released the Monster Collection, and they now and they just release, and now they've kind of expanded. They release more books. The Time Lord Victorious ones came out recently, also by BBC Books. So now you've got BBC Books as one of the main runners, and then you have the Target novelizations. So yeah, but obviously the Target novelizations, once they'd released them all, they only needed to re-release them. So like My City of Death has been re-released a couple of times. But obviously with the 2005 revival, as you've probably seen from my when I showed my Target book novels, they obviously had done. They needed to do some new series ones, because obviously if the BBC Books are doing well and the original Target novels did quite well, they will try and see if these worked. And so yeah, you got stuff like Rose has been novelised. Twice Upon a Time has now a Target book novel. You got also I own Day of the Doctor, which is a highly praised Target book novelisation. Just the other day, stories such as Dalek, the movie became a novelisation. The new series has also had stuff like Christmas Invasion become a novelisation. So since they are still releasing them, they have just released them. It does show that Doctor Who there is still a market for them. So I believe they should still probably keep going on, unless either they need to axe them because something's happened and then they're not getting as much sales in anymore, or if they stop selling as much as they are at the moment. But yeah, these are arguably, I think, probably more, not impressive, but there are probably a bigger market for these than there is in the Big Finish stuff. So I think these are like not your next gen DVDs, because you got your DVDs which sell like really well, and then you got your books which also sell pretty well. And then I think the Big Finish stuff, it works well, and it does kind of like, you know, it does work well, but it just didn't. It works well, but only for people who know about how good they are. But if you don't know how good they're about, sometimes you can get Doctor Who fans who buy books, and then you don't get them who buy Big Finish because they might be a bit skeptical and whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts and kind of like the history of it. My thoughts on how they'll take it on and the history of the books. If you've liked this video, like and subscribe. I mean, if you've watched this all the way to the end, that means you probably were quite interested in it. But yeah, I also want to look at the Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood and Class. Mainly Sarah Jane Adventures and Class, because those are the two I've seen. Oh, and the Dalek spin-off that they created recently. Yeah, and look at those. So if you're interested in watching that, then if you've watched this when it's just come out, you have to wait a couple of days. But otherwise, you should be able to watch it. So yeah, like and subscribe, and yeah, see you.